The phone call came at 2:17 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon. I was in my home office, trying to focus on quarterly reports, when my mother-in-law Barbara's ringtone, set to a funeral dirge as a private joke, interrupted my concentration. "Katherine." Her voice was breathless, panicked. "I need you to come over right now. Something terrible has happened." I minimized my spreadsheet, already exhausted. "What's wrong now, Barbara?" I can't tell you over the phone. Just come, please, and bring Richard." Richard, my husband, was in court. He was always in court these days, building his practice as a defense attorney. But something in Barbara's voice made me pause. She sounded genuinely terrified, not her usual dramatic self. "He's working. Can this wait until?" "Bring him now," she shrieked and hung up. 40 minutes later, Richard and I stood in Barbara's pristine living room. She was on her cream-colored sofa, clutching a business card and shaking. Her perfect blonde bob was disheveled, her makeup smeared. This was not the composed country club queen I'd known for 12 years. "Mom, what happened?" Richard knelt beside her. She held up the business card with trembling fingers. "Goldstein and Associates, Fine Jewelry and Estate Acquisitions," it read. "This man called," she whispered. "About the jewelry." My blood turned to ice. "What jewelry?" Barbara wouldn't meet my eyes. "Just some old pieces I found while organizing. Costume jewelry. Worthless things." "What? Jewelry?" My voice could have cut glass. Richard looked between us, confused. "What's going on?" Barbara finally looked at me, and I saw real fear in her eyes. "When you were at that conference last month, I was helping organize the house. I found a box of old jewelry in your closet. Tarnished, ugly things. I thought I was doing you a favor, getting rid of junk." The room spun. I gripped the doorframe. "The wooden box? With the carved roses?" She nodded miserably. "You took my mother's jewelry box? It was just clutter. Those pieces were so old and dirty. I got $500 for the whole lot at the pawn shop. I was going to surprise you by putting the money toward new, modern pieces." I sank into a chair, my legs unable to support me. My mother's jewelry. The only things I had left of her besides memories. Gone. "Kate." Richard was at my side. "Honey, talk to me." "Your mother sold my mother's jewelry collection," I said numbly. "Every piece she left me when she died." His face went white. He knew what those pieces meant to me. He'd held me while I sobbed over that box after Mom's funeral 10 years ago. He'd watched me carefully clean each piece on the anniversary of her death. "Mom," Richard's voice was deadly quiet. "Tell me you didn't." "I was trying to help," Barbara wailed. "You should see the junk. Black and silver, cloudy stones. That sweet Katie deserves better than old, worthless. Those were heirlooms." I screamed, finally finding my voice. "Some of those pieces were over 150 years old. They belonged to my great-great-grandmother." Barbara flapped the business card. "That's why this man called. He says. She couldn't continue. Richard took the card and pulled out his phone. "I'm calling him." "No." Barbara grabbed his arm. "He said he's coming here. With documentation. And an appraiser. And possibly the police." "The police?" Richard's lawyer instincts kicked in. "Mom, what exactly did he say?" Barbara was hyperventilating now. "He said the collection I sold contained several museum-quality pieces. He said there was a Victorian sapphire parure that's been documented in books. He said the total value could be in the millions, and he needs to verify I had legal right to sell them." I laughed. I couldn't help it. High, hysterical laughter that made both Richard and Barbara stare at me in alarm. "Millions?" I gasped between laughs. "You sold millions of dollars worth of jewelry for $500? I didn't know." Barbara sobbed. "They were so ugly. How was I supposed to know?" "Because they weren't yours to sell." Richard roared. I'd never seen him this angry at his mother. "You went into our bedroom, took something that wasn't yours, and sold it without permission. That's theft, Mom." The doorbell rang. We all froze. Richard answered it. A distinguished older man stood there with a younger woman carrying a leather portfolio. "Mr. Goldstein?" Richard guessed. "Indeed. I'm Marcus Goldstein, and this is my associate, Dr. Sarah Winters from the Metropolitan Museum. We need to discuss the jewelry collection that was sold to my establishment last month." Barbara whimpered. I stood on shaky legs. "Please come in. I'm Katherine Morrison. Those were my pieces that were sold without my knowledge or consent." Mr. Goldstein's eyes sharpened. "Without your consent? Mrs. Morrison, do you have documentation of ownership?" I have my mother's will, photos of the pieces, insurance appraisals from 1987, and a letter from my grandmother describing the provenance of each piece. Thank God, he breathed. Please, may we sit? This is quite urgent. We arranged ourselves in Barbara's living room. Dr. Winters pulled out a tablet and showed me photos. Mrs. Morrison, do you recognize these pieces? My mother's jewelry filled the screen. But not as I remembered them. These photos showed them cleaned, restored, glowing with life. The black and silver was actually aged platinum. The cloudy stones were Burmese rubies, Kashmir sapphires, and old mine diamonds. Yes, I whispered, touching the screen. That's my mother's collection. Dr. Winters and Mr. Goldstein exchanged glances. Mrs. Morrison, Dr. Winters said gently, your mother's collection contains several historically significant pieces. This brooch, she swiped to a new photo, belonged to Empress Josephine. This necklace was commissioned by a Russian Grand Duchess. And this parure, she showed a matching set of sapphire and diamond jewelry, is documented in 3 museum catalogs as whereabouts unknown since 1962. Barbara made a choking sound. Your grandmother was Eloise Hartwell, correct? Dr. Winters continued. She was a prominent collector in the 1940s and 50s. When she died, her collection was thought to be lost or sold off piecemeal. Museums have been searching for these pieces for decades. How much? Barbara's voice was barely audible. Mr. Goldstein pulled out documentation. Based on preliminary authentication and current market values, the collection's auction estimate would be between $8 and $12 million. Barbara fainted, simply crumpled to her cream carpet like a discarded tissue. Richard rushed to his mother while I stared at the numbers Mr. Goldstein was showing me. My mother had lived modestly, never revealing the true value of her inheritance. She'd told me the pieces had sentimental value, that they were family treasures to be passed down. I'd assumed she meant emotionally valuable, not this. Mrs. Morrison, Mr. Goldstein said while Richard revived Barbara, I want to be very clear. I run a legitimate business. The moment I realized what I had, I began trying to trace the rightful owner. I would never knowingly participate in handling stolen goods. The pieces are safe? That's all I cared about. In my vault, individually catalogued and photographed. I've already had them preliminarily authenticated. However, he paused delicately. There is the matter of the legal complications. Barbara, now conscious and propped against the sofa, moaned. Your mother-in-law presented herself as the owner. She signed affidavits stating the pieces were hers to sell. That's fraud. I didn't mean to. Barbara wailed. I thought they were costume jewelry. Ignorance isn't a legal defense, Richard said coldly. You stole from my wife and committed fraud. You're looking at potential felony charges. Richard, Barbara gasped. You wouldn't let them arrest your mother. You stole $12 million worth of jewelry from my wife. What exactly do you think should happen? I held up my hand. Everyone looked at me. Mr. Goldstein, what do you need from me to return my property? Proof of ownership, which you say you have. A police report for the theft. And, he hesitated, I'm afraid I'll need compensation for what I paid out. $500? I almost laughed again. Plus storage, authentication, and insurance fees. Roughly $3,000 total. I looked at Barbara. You're going to pay him. Right now. Every penny. She nodded frantically, scrambling for her purse. And Mr. Goldstein, I'll have my husband draw up papers stating you were an innocent party who acted in good faith to return stolen goods to their rightful owner. That's very generous, Mrs. Morrison. Katherine, Richard said warningly. She committed a crime. I looked at my husband. She did. And she's going to pay for it. Just not with jail time. Barbara sobbed with relief. Prematurely. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice eerily calm. Barbara, you're going to write me a check for $500,000. What? She shrieked. I don't have that kind of money. You have a house worth $1.2 million. You have a stock portfolio. You have options. But why? Consider it a stupid tax. And payment for my pain and suffering. You see, you didn't just steal jewelry. You stole the last tangible connection I had to my mother. You called her treasures junk. You pawned my heritage for pocket change. Katie, please. I'm not finished. You will also make a $100,000 donation to the Metropolitan Museum in my mother's name. Dr. Winters, I'd like to discuss loaning some pieces for exhibition. Dr. Winters lit up. That would be wonderful. The Josephine brooch alone would be a centerpiece for our upcoming Empire exhibition. Furthermore, I continued, You will write a formal letter of apology to be read at the next family gathering, explaining exactly what you did and why it was wrong. You will never again enter my home without explicit permission. You will never touch, move, or make decisions about my belongings. This is extortion, Barbara wailed. No, Richard said quietly. This is mercy. Kate could have you arrested right now. Instead, she's offering you a way to make amends. I want the check by tomorrow, I said. Or I file charges. Barbara aged 10 years in that moment. But she nodded. Mr. Goldstein and Dr. Winters provided documentation, took our statements, and arranged for the jewelry's return. As they left, Dr. Winters pressed my hand. Your mother had exquisite taste, she said. These pieces deserve to be seen and appreciated. They will be, I promised. After I spend some time with them. After everyone left, Richard and I sat in our car in silence. Why didn't you press charges? He finally asked. Because she's your mother. Because revenge won't bring back the months those pieces were gone. And because, I smiled grimly, making her pay $600,000 for jewelry she sold for $500 is a punishment she'll feel every day for the rest of her life. She violated your trust. She showed me who she really is. Someone who goes through my belongings, makes judgments about their value, and disposes of them without thought. Now I know to never trust her with anything important. The next day, Barbara's check cleared. I donated to the museum as promised. And that evening, I sat with my returned jewelry, each piece carefully cleaned and restored by Mr. Goldstein's team. I held my great-great-grandmother's sapphire ring, remembering how my mother would let me try it on as a child, telling me stories of the strong women who'd worn it before me. The junk Barbara had seen was a legacy of generations. Barbara learned several valuable lessons that day. Never assume something is worthless because you don't understand its value. Never take what isn't yours. Never underestimate a woman who inherited both her mother's jewelry and her grandmother's backbone. The Josephine brooch now sits in a museum case with a placard reading, on loan from the collection of Katherine Morrison, in memory of Eleanor Hartwell Taylor. Thousands of people see it every year. Barbara sees it too sometimes. Richard tells me she stands there for hours, staring at the piece she sold for roughly the price of a nice dinner, now behind bulletproof glass with an insurance value that could buy a small mansion. She's never apologized sincerely. But every month when she writes her installment check for the $600,000, she had to take out a loan against her house. I know she remembers. And that's worth more than any apology she could offer.